And we'll get to more of that a little bit later. In the meantime, Mike Bibby is the new head coach at Sac State University. This is a thing that had been rumored for a while. Good for Mike, good for the school. And I know a lot of times when a name is brought, hey, let's bring in Vlade as GM. A lot of it's like, oh, God, okay, well, what are we doing here? Let's start first and foremost with Mike Bibby. There is very little argument here that there are certain positions that are more conducive to having success when it comes to management in sports. If you are a catcher in baseball, you look around at a lot of these managers that are successful in baseball, they're former catchers. If you look in football, a lot of them backup quarterbacks. If you look in basketball, point guards. Now, those are not absolute facts. There are absolutely exceptions. But what I find that are the best commonalities, really, which Mike doesn't necessarily fit into, is the player that played that was good enough to be world-class enough to play in the major leagues or NBA or NFL wasn't tremendous as a player, but in the process of backing up or grinding their way through their career, they had to use their IQ more than their God-given ability, which is why generally and almost to a person, you don't see superstars make good managers or coaches. Larry Bird is an exception that comes to mind. I know there's a few others. Generally, when you look at coaches that had a playing career, it was at best maybe one or two all-stars, but most of the time they're just guys. Even a guy, look at Eric Spoelstra, for example. Eric Spoelstra played Division I college basketball at Portland State, I think. Ended up being a film guy working his way up. Where Mike Bibby stands out a little bit, and I think his biggest asset is, let's just keep it simple. His dad was a tremendous basketball coach, yes. Henry, a decorated basketball coach. That's another thing that you can't control, but is usually a tremendous asset. If you're a coach's kid, you've grown up with a coach's mentality from day one. Secondly, when you're on the floor as a point guard, you are directing the offense, i.e. directing the team. You are the floor. That's why they call him the floor general, which is another way of saying you're the head coach on the floor. He was Rick Adelman's left arm on the floor. So in addition to coming from a literal coaching tree genetically, he was also, for his career, the general on the floor. So for me, Mike Bibby ingrained in himself, and we'll talk about this when he comes on eventually, he's a coach. He is a coach. Now he's got an opportunity to really get his feet wet at, no disrespect, a smaller program, less pressure, more leeway. He's a golden god in this town. I think it's a fantastic hire in a really good situation.
Yeah, a couple things here. I think the one part that I like is Mike Bibby wanted this job.
Yes.
Like he was seeking this job and he got this job. The second part is, for example, I got a text from someone that I know kind of in the business that lives in Carolinas. Mm-hmm. If they hire, the 2 hires ago, David Patrick from LSU was a pretty well decorated bench coach that comes here as a decent name. I mean, there's nobody reaching out like, wow, like Mike Bibby is a splash, is a sizzle. People will see that and go, there's a reaction to that. Now, those are the good things. Now it's on to him. Like, what is the program going to be? What does he want to do? What's the style? Can he recruit? Can he get play in this NIL world? And that's the real game changer right now. And apparently the school's trying to do a lot there. We're seeing billboards all over the place, a lot of football stuff. Can they do the same for basketball?
Well, NIL is NIL, and that's just digital and mathematics. And he's going to do with NIL what he can do with NIL. Where Mike, I think, is going to have a little bit of an advantage he can use is he's a well-known former NBA player.
Yeah.
And that matters when you're in living rooms and you're dealing with a kid and parents who have choices to make. And let's say everything's the same across the board. I don't know that kids are going to specifically come just for Mike Bibby. There's going to be other things at play. But if things are relatively even and you've got a choice to, okay, I'm going to go to a city that is fairly family friendly. It's a good city to be in. There's not a huge history of success or expectations with that basketball program. So if you make any noise, it's going to be a huge deal. And oh, by the way, you have the opportunity to be coached by this former NBA player that knows what he's talking about. And let's be, again, I say this with all love and respect. Odds are, if you're going to Sac State to play basketball, you're not in line to be an NBA first-round pick. So it's a different thought process altogether. All the guys that have NBA dreams, and that's basically it basically should fill up, let's say, would fill up 4 rounds of an NBA draft. I'm talking to the sure things, and then I'm talking about the guys that think they can make it, and in some cases, well, you're talking about the equivalent of 4 rounds of an NBA draft. So you're 120, 150 players each year in the incoming freshman pool that have legit NBA hopes. Sac State, for the most part, if not entirely, is going to be picking from the other group, which is, okay, what are your goals then? Love to make the NBA. That's not realistic. So what I'd like to do, I'd like to be at a place where I can get playing time, where I can improve my game, where I'm going to maximize my efforts and either A, move into the private sector, or B, maybe I'm going to have a 5-6 year career in Europe, in Turkey, in Australia, something like that. This is a place where Mike Bibby has not only the knowledge, but also the institutional connections to be able to say, hey, my agent knows, or I know, or I played with. And, if you want to spread yourself out post Sac State, I can help you. And that's something a Jason Ross or a Carmichael Dave or a Fred Smith coming in he's great at X's and O's, but he doesn't have that same cachet that Mike Bibby does.
Yeah. And then the other part too, hiring that coaching staff will be critical, and who helps with all of that. So, yeah, I mean, I think the splash what the school has done is pretty interesting here. And like I said, billboards all over town about football. Basketball is working on trying to get facilities, like if they did move up, just talking about moving to the Golden One to play some games. So there's a lot of potential here.
Have you seen the latest ones too, where they're putting, you have the ones with the smiling or the colors or the Hornet or whatever. Have you seen the really, really formal ones that have been showing up? Super formal. They're calling them William boards. It's like the full name. So it's more formal than a billboard. Safe to say most Kings fans expected to lose last night, but why does it sting so much?